가서도 오늘와 바라 감야야 부랬대 뭐 닦이니 쏟다루엔 점은 미스레 나사루나 넘버와 다시가 야부랬대 뭐 가라가서도 오늘와 바라
A reorganization of education and learning takes place out caring forward on purpose
I came to America because I heard the streets were paved with gold. When I got here, I found out 3 things. First, the streets weren't paved with gold. Second, they weren't paved at all. And third, I was expected to pave them.
From the late 1800s and the early 1900s, immigrants saw the United States as a golden opportunity for success. In the period of 1877 through 1890, more than 6.3 million immigrants entered the United States. This period of American history caused great change in culture of the neighborhoods and cities, humanitarian movements that helped assimilation, laws surrounding immigration, and educational reform. Many factors in other countries pushed immigrants to the New World. In Italy, many southern farmers had been struggling at the mercy of wealthy landowners and had to face declining health conditions. They felt that America would provide them with the opportunity to succeed. In Sweden, the grain crop failed for 3 consecutive years, leaving the country in utter despair. Jewish immigrants, particularly from Russia, fled religious persecution. Rough conditions all over Europe and the Middle East pushed many immigrants across the Atlantic Ocean to the shores of the United States. Not all immigrants crossed the ocean in order to permanently live in America. Many came temporarily to get rich and returned to their home countries. From 1907 to 1911, of every 100 Italians who arrived in the United States, 73 returned to the old country. For Southern and Eastern Europe as a whole, approximately 44 of every 100 who arrived returned back home. This trip across the Atlantic was no simple journey. After paying an inflated cost for tickets, the immigrants were crammed underneath the deck of a ship, a place known as steerage. Many obtained illnesses or died on the arduous, difficult journey under unsanitary conditions. The main port of entry for these immigrants was at Ellis Island, New York. The biggest hurdle presented to the immigrants was the medical examination. Letters were written in chalk on the backs of suspected sick people. However, many immigrants found a way around this.
We immigrated to America because America has lots of bright opportunities. Now we will have a bright future.
Mama, I don't want to leave you.
Don't be nervous. I love you.
Next. What is your name? Can you speak? What's wrong with you? Officer, escort this girl to the north wing.
My sister developed warts on the back of her hand, so they could put a chalk X on the back of her coat. The X's were put aside to see whether they had to be re-examined or deported. Where would she go if they deported her? Some kind of man. I don't know who he was. Told my sister to turn her coat around.
Most people had with them few belongings. They were essentially starting with a clean slate in America.
I arrived in New York in 1921. All my belongings consisted of an additional change of underwear and 2 books. Abraham Bernstein.
They would soon realize that the lack of possessions would be a relatively minor problem compared to the conditions they would have to face next.
Immigrants began to pile into cities. There often proved to be lack of appropriate housing. They moved into tenements, or slums. The Dutton Bell tenement, which was invented by James E. Ware, had a space of only 25 by 100 feet and had 30 to 40 rooms. 4 to 6 families lived on the floor, and one room could be used as a kitchen, bedroom, and a workroom all at the same time. The tenements had little light and were grimy, notorious fire traps because of the limited ventilation.
Both rooms together have an area of about 18 feet square, and these apartments are the home of 6 persons. The father of the family, a day laborer, is absent. The mother, a wrinkled crone at 30, sits rocking in her arms an infant, whose pasty and pallid features tell that decay and death are usurping the place of health and life. 2 older children are in the street, and a 4th child is emaciated as a skeleton.
A description of an Irish tenement by a New York agency. Although many different ethnicities lived very near each other in these slums, they mostly stayed within their own cultures.
The gap between the classes in which it surges unseen, unsuspected by the thoughtless, is widening day by day. Jacob Riis.
As a result of these brutal conditions, many people began to expose the atrocities that were occurring in American cities. Jacob Riis was a significant leader in showing Americans a more real sense of reality in correlation with immigrant slums. An immigrant himself migrating in 1870 from Denmark, Riis endured the hardships firsthand. As he began to climb the ranks of society, he became a police reporter and photographer for the New York Tribune, which gave him the opportunity to present the public to what he referred to as the other half.
One half of the world does not know how the other half lives. It did not know because it did not care. Jacob Riis.
His haunting accounts of the hardships were documented in his book, How the Other Half Lives, by Picture Journalism, which was later termed by President Theodore Roosevelt as being a photographic essay. Riis's belief was that the slum is the measure of civilization. Civilization could only be as strong as its weakest link, the impoverished slums and tenement houses. Mulberry Street was Riis's most memorable account of the poverty-stricken slums. It was famous for having the worst conditions out of the buildings. He witnessed molded stairs and walls, children on the verge of death by starvation, and poor sanitation devices. His dedication to aid the slums finally paid off when the head of the New York Police Department, Theodore Roosevelt, agreed to close all police-operated poorhouses.
When immigrants came to the United States, they came because they heard there were infinite job opportunities. This is what caused the overcrowding in the cities.
In reality, there were never enough jobs and employers took advantage of immigrants. The immigrant men were paid less than native-born people, and women were paid even less than that. The immigrants had to fill many jobs in these major cities. They usually worked in manual labor. They dug tunnels and constructed steel and glass buildings. Additionally, many of the immigrants from certain countries formed their stereotypes. Italians worked as shoe shiners, sewer cleaners, and other jobs that Americans didn't want. Polish people worked as meat packers, and Jews worked on selling cigars.
"You don't call an Italian a white man," said a congressman to a boss of a company. "No, sir," said the boss. "Italian is a dago."
Social tensions rose because of the fear that immigrants, especially Italians, would take over jobs. In reality, most of the jobs that immigrants took over were jobs that native-born people would not want. Gangs really started to flourish at the turn of the century. Gangs led to mobsters such as Capone. The 5 Points Gang, led by Italian immigrant Paolo Bacciarelli, was the most significant street gang to form in the United States. The 5 Points Gang basically fed all their youth to the mafia after they had reached a certain maturity point. Capone, or Scarface, became a member of the James Street Gang, which was similar to the 5 Pointers. Luciano, another famous gangster, also sprouted from this gang.